Hello, everyone. Bienvenidos. For those of you who are listening in, we are so glad to have you gathered in this virtual space. Today's panel discussion continues this celebration of process-oriented new work by opening up a question and conversation around the richness and complexity of Latinx story worlds. So in the next 40 minutes, we're going to open up this conversation to our brilliant panel here today. And then at the end of our session, towards the last 20 minutes, we're going to open up for some question and answers from you all. And to engage with us, you can use the question and answer function through Vimeo. If you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little header that says ask a question with a text box underneath that. And if you're currently in a full screen mode, you're going to need to minimize to access this function. Type your question in and you can choose whether or not you would like to be anonymous, and we'll get your voices into the conversation. I don't want to take up too much time. So I want to hear all of your thoughts and your conversation here. So we're going to start with introductions, including our names, pronouns, where you're located, a brief physical description, and then how you intersect with New Works Festival. I'll kick us off, and then I'm gonna promise I'm gonna be quiet here. My name is Erika Patricia Saucedo, and I'm an MFA in Dance and Social Justice here at University of Texas. With deep respect, I wanna pay homage to the ancestral lands and the ancestors and present indigenous people that have shepherded these lands, the Jumanos, Tonkawa, Lipan Apache, Hualhuitecan, Comanche peoples, currently in Austin, Texas, where those ancestral lands are at. I use those she, her pronouns, light-skinned brown woman with short brown hair that comes about to my ears. I got my gold earrings, como siempre, and a little hot pink dress on with a jacket on top. And I will pass it to Marisela.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marisela Trevino Orta. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a playwright and a guest responder this week for the New Works Festival. Depending on the season, I'm an olive-toned fourth generation Mexican-American. I grew up in a small town just south of Austin, which is where I'm currently zooming from, the ancestral homelands of the Jumanos, Tonkawa, Lipan Apache, and Comanche peoples. I grew up, like I said, in a small town, but I left and moved to San Francisco in the early aughts where I was pursuing poetry. And I was a poet for a very long time, but found my way to playwriting. And I consider myself a Bay Area playwright because that's the theater scene that I came up in. And I left San Francisco in 2015 to get a second MFA at the Iowa Playwrights Workshop. And that put me in the Midwest until the pandemic began. And then because theater came to a halt, I had no income, so I moved down to stay with a family member who's here in Austin. I'm very excited to be here today. And I will pass the microphone to Florinda Bryant.
Hey, y'all. I'm Florinda Bryant. I use she, her pronouns. I'm like, how are y'all so good at describing yourselves? It's like, y'all gonna trick me up on the first question. So am I allowed to cuss? Can I? Yeah, no, so I'm a black ass Mexican. I'm thick. I'm like tortillas and cornbread. I don't know. I got blue hair. I'm sorry, that's what I got in terms of what I look like. I'm a playwright, a director, a performer, an interdisciplinary artist here in Austin, Texas. I'm a Texas girl. I'm from Texas. And yeah, I'm excited to be here on this panel today. Oh, no, I'm passing to Carra. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, mija. I'm Carra Martinez. I use she, her, hers. I'm in Austin, Texas as well. Home of the Tonkawa and the Comanche in particular. I'm a respondent for the Cohen New Works. I sometimes teach in the department as well. I'm the director of a new sort of cultural performance, contemporary performing art festival called Live in America, which is it's housed under Fusebox Festival. The former director of community engagement at the Guthrie Theater. I worked extensively at Penumbra Theater. When I was up in Minnesota for 9 years, I did my doctorate in theater historiography while I was up there. But I'm like grew up as an adult in Austin. I know back in the day, I know Flo from back in those days. Did a lot of devise work, new work development, worked with folks like the Rubemex. I grew up in rural East Texas on a cattle ranch. The nearest neighbor was probably, I don't know, half a mile, 3/4 a mile away.
Híjole, we are here and the power is in the house. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. And I just want to say, you know, we have so many disciplines and we have so many skills and expertise in the room. And we're all brought together underneath this umbrella of Latinx identity. And I think one way that I'm imagining how we can celebrate that frame is by inviting in our distinctive relationships to the cultural identifiers, which we've already kind of started to by grounding ourselves in geography and experiences. And so my first question is, what does Latinx mean to you? How do you find it useful, or do you find it useful when you engage in creative process and performance? Anyone who feels ready to speak.
We're all being so kind, so mannerable.
I'll go first, and I forgot my physical describers, and this will speak to it. I am mixed race Latina. I didn't grow up identifying as that. That's a thing. Latina and Latinx is a thing the Academy taught me I had to identify as. I grew up identifying as Mexican American, or as my dad would say, his little Mexicans. And I guess that speaks to Latinx, like the certain kind of problematics of code switching dependent upon which community you're working with and you're serving, and the ways in which that term, I think, especially by the Academy, gets leveraged as an identity marker, but in the ground and on community, it's not necessarily how folks identify. And you got to read the room, and you got to know if you're working with the old school brown berets in East Austin, they're going to identify as Chicanos. And that's the way they want to work. And if you're with your family, you identify a particular way. And so it's, for me, that identity marker is a current term, and it will change. And so when you're working with these different communities, you have to just read the room and code switch and respond accordingly and honor their own language practices for how they self-identify. And oftentimes how they self-identify is not in line with how the Academy wants you to self-identify.
Yeah, I'll spirit fingers goes out on everything that was just said. It's definitely because I'm not in the Academy. It all feels like whiteness to me, or what I perceive, you know, how it lands in my life. So even before getting used to being Latinx, being even included in conversations with Latino people is also new. Over the course of my, 20-year plus career, especially when I was younger, there were certain companies that there was no interaction from or no love from. I just started being what I feel is accepted as a Latino, and if it took the X to do it, then, so be it. But I think that in our world, in the performing world, theater world, and also in the community, the work that we still have to do around Black Latinos is still relatively new. So I'm excited to see what happens with this word now that we're including all of us at the table. And I think, and it's taking a while for us all to get in the room. But so literally and I think then, you know, where we're from, our regions will then become a part of it. I think my experience as a Black Mexican is very specific to Texas, is very specific, you know, that's a different conversation with, you know, mixed folks that are from other states. So I know that Texas has a really big old part to play in all of that. So I'm very excited to see where we land with that. But it's not a term that I use for myself. I know that I'm always describing myself to appease whiteness. I think being Black and Mexican is also very different from being white and Mexican, because I think that that's a different thing. So I'm not, you know, biracial, I'm mixed. So I don't use any of them. And to be quite honest, Black as Mexican, quite literally, is how I move through the world. And my mother, you know, she dies every time because she's Chicana. She don't know nothing about it. And again, you know, what I do appreciate, like there's a way, you know, that there's ownership in that term that I just can't wait for us to find something new that we all create for ourselves, because it's coming. I'll wait.
Yeah, I think makes me think about, well, the question makes me think about all the terms that I've encountered, like since growing up. You know, when I was a kid, I would hear my elders refer to themselves as Mexicans, even though I'm fourth generation. You know, that's a very, but it speaks to their experience of how they were marginalized in society. And then I remember encountering the term Hispanic. And of course, that's, as we know, like a census term. And it ties us to our colonial history with Spain. And I always also associated that word with just people in the US, like applying to people that were in the US or used by people in the US. And then in the 90s is when I first heard the term Latino and Latina. And I heard it from a writer that I admire. And I got excited about that term because I felt like it acknowledged our cultural community's diaspora and the connection to like Latin America and the people from Latin America living here in the US. It kind of felt like it was erasing a border in some way that was in my life. And in the 90s, I also heard the term Chicano. I didn't grow up hearing that being used by my family. And I mean, the other identifier I often heard was Tejano, right?
Uh-huh.
When I heard Chicano and I was learning about the Chicano movement, I associated it with California and with a specific time and place. And I never thought or felt that I could use that word. So I still kind of struggle with whether or not to use it because for all those reasons. Now to the X coming in and also the E, Latine, you know, because it can be conjugated. And what excites me about the evolution that we're seeing with language, well, first of all, is just to say that culture and language aren't static things. They change, you know, with each generation and time. And so for me, this new term just as a reminder of that we're constantly changing and in conversation with one another. And what excites me about this change is that it's kind of bringing more people into the community, those who've been marginalized, not just by our own community, but also by society at large. You know, is it going to be the same term? Like, will there be new terms in 5 or 10 years? There might be, but I think it's about it's like the openness that I'm excited about, that the X maybe starts conversations.
I'm really sitting with what's kind of surfacing, listening to you all about this idea that like these external labels can also be wielded and shifted in order to bring us into coalition space. I know I've been thinking about it kind of in a frustrating way for a long time, and y'all are opening me in that way. I wonder, as you create work and knowing that we're talking about sort of centering Latinx story worlds, what modes of expression are you able to activate in your work? Whether it's use of the body or style and aesthetics or message or process, in order to bring in this sort of Latinx activation, cultural heritage. I wonder how you're working in your own processes to do that.
I can start again. I'll go again since I was just talking. My undergraduate degree was in history, specifically Latin American history. And so I find myself going back to that often, like things I remember from my undergraduate degree will end up becoming like seeds for plays. So I often find content coming to me from that, that experience in my undergrad. Style-wise, it's interesting because I think some of my work gets categorized as magical realism, and it's not really magical realism. You know, magical realism has become like this shorthand term for any time like someone from our community uses fantasy. And so so sometimes I've had to work really hard with marketing departments to be like, don't use that term. And you know, you can't control what a reviewer will say, but it's like, this is not that, trying to educate people about it. Yeah, I'll stop there and let somebody else talk about some stuff. Maybe I'll think of something else that pops in.
Because I'm not an academic. I'm like one of them street artists. But I do feel like it, which it sounds like, as long as I tell the truth in my work, then I'm doing all of the things. And so I don't ever come like, it's like, what is the, like, it feels very academic-y to kind of process this thing that our people have been living and storytelling and sharing, and most importantly, surviving. So, and I feel like as artists just across the board, but for me, that's how Latinx comes in through my work. As long as I'm doing it, then I'm doing it. And it's interesting because I was like, there feels like there's so much permission asking to like, can I use this label? Can I do it this way? Can I? And the way that I like squash all of that is like, as long as I'm telling my truth, as long as this blood is flowing in my veins, then I am doing the work. I'm doing the work of, and that's the process. Like, that's how my culture and my people show up in my work. We're storytellers. We ain't always had language to describe it. Oh yeah, describing it is also coming from this very white lens of things. So yeah, I feel like as long as I'm telling the truth and it's me, then we rolling, we mobbing. And it's in my hair and it's in my hips, it's in my voice. And it's the stories, the chisme on the side that you know what I mean? Like that's how it comes. And the textures, the flavors of the food, the flavor, all of that, that's pulling from all of these other cultures, that's all running in all of our veins. So that's how it appears in my work.
I worked in a big old regional theater for a while and watched the Latinx plays that were produced in those spaces, in the spaces it was in conversation with the other theaters. And what always struck me in those places was just this idea of like, damn, this feels real westernized and is missing a lot of flavor. I mean, it's missing like all the things that happen in Omokajete. It is like missing. And I'm working right now with Latinx communities in Las Vegas, in Juarez and El Paso, and in San Juan. And the way of working with them is to say, okay, what do you want to make? We'll make whatever you want to make. We'll support whatever you want to support. You will develop your own budget. You'll hire who you want. You'll write your own contextual language. We'll be in conversation through these processes. And it is not lost upon me that none of those communities have said, I want to make a play and put it in a black box. No one wants to make a play. And I want to use a script that already exists in the world. None of them want to use, like, they want to craft with all the thing, like all the feel of their community in their way, and using their words and their style and their ritual and their practices. And none of them look like a play. They look like ceremony. They look like queer cabaret. They look like sound installations. But so I even question like what are we saying like Latinx performance is, and are we inherently just like missing out on a vast wealth of work when we think of it in terms of theater, in a strict sense of that word? And what is
I love that,
folks to slot into that too.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's why I was challenging when I was looking at this question because I don't think of, like Florinda said, I don't think about process or style as I'm creating. But it's brown people that always show up in my head. Though it's people who look like me, and it's always women. You know, it's like Latinas are always the protagonists, the main characters, the stories, the main relationships. They're the people who are showing up in my imagination. And that's who I want to see, because there's not enough. Like Carra was saying, like on the Western stage and in the American stage, there's a very, it's sort of like, I think we can all acknowledge like the spectrum, or at least I see a spectrum of who we are as people, like where we're from, class, religion, how long we've been in this country. It's there's no one identity or experience that can define us. And yet what we see on American stages is just that, this thin sliver of that spectrum. We don't get to see all the other ways that we exist in life. And I think part of the thing that I'm interested in is putting on, I want to see more stories, not just mine, because we have, in order to get that 3D picture of who we are, we need so many more stories on stage or off stage, as Carra said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I like in the kitchen, like in the, you know what I mean? Like in the backyard, like I think that there's, and when I think about my mom, my grandmother, there was so much of like hiding and protecting culture to protect self, to survive, that as like performers, we're breaking down, giving ourselves permission to be like, as a people, we're all having that same experience to some degree, like being able to, you know, I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. My mother was not allowed, you know what I mean? Like, and then that disconnect. And so I think that the same way we as artists are having that experience, so is everybody, and you know, all of our people are. And it's really, you know, exciting. Like the more we get out of the theater, the more that we're like establishing our safe space for us. I think that it allows people to participate with art in a different kind of way. Sometimes I feel like as an artist, like I struggle, it's like, do we have the privilege of this artistic interaction with so many, you know, social issues that we face as a people? Like, am I supposed to be working on a play right now? Or am I supposed to be out trying to break the children out of the cages? Like how, and I know I personally feel that sometimes the privilege of my art is a thing that I struggle with quite a bit. Like if I do get us gathered, are we supposed to be organizing, or or are we, you know, sharing this experience? And both of them are important, but I do feel like with my work, that's what I struggle with, is the privilege of art and how it functions in our life, and do I have a right to it?
My dad, I've told this story to my students. When I was an undergrad at UT, and my dad, like so many first generation people, his father was undocumented. He desperately wanted me to be a medical doctor or a lawyer. And so he would check my course schedule every semester to make sure there were no art classes on it, because he knew that that was like what was going to happen if he didn't watch out. And I was such an angry, bitter, early 20-year-old about all of this. But I now understand, to speak to what Flo was saying, like that is a gesture about remaining safe in the US, that you need your kid to be a doctor or a lawyer, and to be an artist is irresponsible in some ways. And I think about now when there's a musician, Amalia Mondragon, who's from El Paso. She was just at my house, and like where she felt safe for us to meet was in my backyard. And like, you know, we had the music going. We were making gorditas together. And that is the safe space from which to begin work, and which to begin knowing one another, and to then try to create that exchange inside a theater system is really difficult, especially if you're working with a quick production schedule. It's next to impossible. But like, that's the kind of work in recovery that actually needs to be done.
Well, and they look at you strange, because I work with my artistic family, you know, Virginia Grice, like whatever. We want to come in, let's have some food, like take the time to connect. To do that in a theater space, you have to have that sub calendar where you have like, this is the work we do in front of the gaze, and this is the work that we do under the gaze. And then how do we claim space, you know what I mean, to merge those two calendars is a thing I'm still struggling with and figuring out for myself.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm really sitting with what y'all are talking about with this idea of like, sometimes the theater and the academy can feel like the last place that our people's culture can breathe and grow and be messy and be new. And you kind of already talked to like the strategies that come from our ancestral wisdom of how you make that space, how you like elbow it out, carve it out with like, you bring food in, you make sure that there's time. I think one of my mentors, MK Abedu, says moving at the speed of trust. And like, how do we make that room and that time? I wonder if you have any other strategies for how you insist on the necessary space, the necessary smells and sights and time as you craft in your spaces.
I think before we hear some advice, it's also, well, this is advice too, but I think it's important to acknowledge that not everybody is at the same place. Like it takes time sometimes to get to be able to just like stand in your power. And sometimes you have to make mistakes to learn how to do that and to be gentle with yourself, because navigating a production process as a playwright is hard enough when you don't have any experience. Add on top of that, trying to deal with systems of oppression, and it's a lot. And so you may do one thing well, but maybe not the other thing. You may mess up this way. It's all going to be learning. So thankfully there are people who have, wisdom to offer, but it can take time, I think, to be gentle with yourself and patient with yourself on your journey is another thing to remember.
I think that's why community is so important though, right? Like you have to, I think that there is a part of like, I think it's really closely connected to that tragic artist mythology, but this thing of like that I'm alone, I will write my plays and I'm alone to do this thing. And your people, the gente, your clique, your posse, your artistic community is critical to like your survival, to your health. And I think that community is like that, and it's all about like taking care. Like if you deeply take care of yourself, you deeply commit to taking care of the people that you are in process with. It's not a sure thing, but it's like if I'm like, how am I taking care of myself? I think that that's a good place to kind of also start. And then how I take care of myself is I have to have community. Like you will not make it if you go into this thing alone. And community is the one where it keeps you from bumping your head so often. You bumping your head so much because you're over there thinking you're gonna figure it out on your own, when you have these people around you who have this wisdom, who can be like, hey, you know what I mean? Work smarter, not harder kind of thing. So yeah, taking care.
And I just think having like people of color around you to help you translate what is happening to you and to help you like validate your own like emotional, mental journey inside processes. Moving back to Austin from being in a very formal space, it took me maybe 6 to 7 months to get past the gut clench fear that I would have in my body if someone asked me to lunch. Because lunch in the old place signaled some real particular things. You want to go to lunch? I'm like, damn, I'm in trouble again. And it took me like being with my old community to like not like get the sweats if I had to go to Chapala. Like, and being able to say to my friends, like, this is what's happening to me, and especially my Black community friends, and they're like, let me translate what is happening to you. And so that you have that kind of metacognitive process where you don't feel out of control always, because it is very easy to just feel no control of who you are. And it takes a while to like step into your space and into your power. And part of that is just acknowledging the ways you weren't able to in the past.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because if you don't, you're gonna go crazy. you will go crazy trying to navigate those systems without having, you know, a compass, somebody to like help you, support you through those. Especially, you know, we all want to break the glass ceiling, but once we do it, you're out there in this position no one's been in before with no support. And everything, I think, you know, that like that trope of like, oh, we'll make it, oh, I'll struggle through it, oh, I'll keep pushing, we just keep surviving, we just keep surviving, you will break yourself. And then you won't have no people to come looking for you. So like, I cannot say enough, like, yeah, community and people around you, just to, it's just so important.
I love what you said about how we can romanticize like the suffering artist or the, and it is romanticized, you know, like we kind of hold it, we hold certain things up on pedestals. Like one of the goals I had for a long time was I want to be a working playwright and just do that. And it sounds lovely. But no one ever talks about how hard it is. Like how stressed. I mean, when I had a day job and I was writing, I was like, oh, I never have time. I'm always deciding with my free time if I'm going to do laundry or hang out with friends or write and feel guilty about not writing or guilty about not seeing friends. But then when I just had my playwriting, the stress of like, where am I going to get money from? Oh my gosh, I have to find a gig or a commission. And that was incapacitating. And I also had to live under the poverty line. Like I was barely, I mean, I could make it because I was in an affordable city. I mean, imagine that. Chicago's affordable, especially if you have a roommate.
Yeah.
But it was just so stressful that I couldn't sleep well or write. And I was like, nobody talks about that. And it's sort of like we idealize this, oh, you're just living off your playwriting. I was like, yeah, and it's super hard. And I don't know if this is the best way to make art.
Right. I wish half the courses taught, or there were, or community courses were just about money, like money in the arts. How do you read a budget? How do you read a contract? How do you understand the difference between an EDI mission and that mission activated in operations through budgeting? How do you like people set you up like you're going to be a playwright? I'm like, are you ready to be poor? Do you know how to be poor? What have you like? I just wish I would just teach a class I'm like on money. Because like that's where the power sits. We're inside capitalism. And if you don't know how to navigate fiscal systems, you are fucked.
I'm sitting with this, you know, talking about this romanticizing, this mythology, these like systems that ask us to move as one person as opposed to as one group of people. And just like really thinking about the title of this entire panel, like Latinx storyworlds, nothing feels like a story about this. Like y'all are describing like ecosystem building, right? And like systems of sustainability. I'm like, where the story is being written as we gather and as we listen to one another. And that's really like, impactful to me. Sitting with that for a second.
But it's what I'm like, it just is like, but that's what our grandmothers did. That's what again, yeah, don't sleep on the blood, baby.
When I went to UT, my Mexican grandma gave me a molcajete and pot holders to go to college with. And like, it's the most symbolic, like I still have them. I use them all the time. And I think about all the other knowledges that are imprinted upon you in those systems, but I still got that molcajete and I got my pot holders.
And I want to acknowledge that if anyone is listening in and has questions, thought bubbles, like you're shook by something and you want to throw it in that question and answer, we'll open the space up to voices outside that are tuning in. And also, as we give some space for that, I wonder what is on the horizon as we stand together and as we look in a direction. What's next for you? What are you visioning towards? Anything you want to share about the horizon that you see, that we see potentially?
I'll go. I'm like, I am breathing. I'm writing. I'm also just, I'm waiting for all of the change. Like, I'm just waiting for it all to just be totally just broken down. Like I'm like, as much, because on my first is like, oh, I'm ready for theaters to be back open, and then I need to, and I'm like, wait a minute. So I am I have some things, like I've been focusing on writing because it's the safest thing to do with this time. I am a performance junkie. Like that's a gift of the pandemic, right? I've always known that, you know, performance was my boo, but now I know we deep in love. Like we not ever gonna break up. But then what does that but what does that mean? Like, because I know that it doesn't mean the theaters. I know that it doesn't mean, like, I'm getting really clear about what it's not. And I'm okay with that. And writing seems to be serving. We have time now, like, you know, in the house. So I'm excited about that, but there is not a lot. It's very, very scary right now, knowing that a bulk of how I was, you know, earning my living was through performing. And so I feel split tongue, right? To be like, the thing that I make my living at and provides me money is a thing that I'm like, oh wait, go ahead and tear her down a little bit more and see her become something else. But I do know that this moment of fear, of uncertainty, I'm well equipped to handle and will survive. And that's because of the blood that's in my veins. I have everything that I need to not only survive, but to thrive and find joy. And so I think there are some lessons that I'm learning about my craft and about our world that are critical. They aren't even quite, I don't even quite realize how deep the work that I'm getting an opportunity to do right now. But I know that there's the suffering, but there's also the survival and the thriving. And so I'm just sitting into that and listening deeply.
The past 2 years, I've been working on a commission with Audible, and I'm glad I had it this last year, especially mainly because there was something to do, because it was so hard to write something new. So rewriting something was at least easier for me, because I was one of those people that's like, I'm having a hard time writing anything new if there's not a deadline involved. So we're almost finished with it. We're in the process of post. We recorded it in February. It's post to go up on their platform in June. And I'm in the process of listening to it and like giving notes, like, can you put 2 more seconds between this and the sound? You know, things like really minutia. So it's hard, but it's coming to an end, and I'm glad because I'm ready for it to be out in the world. When I said that my income went away with the pandemic, I mean, all my income went away. And that made me realize that I need to diversify where the income is coming from. And before the pandemic, I had been talking to, I have a TV, like a manager out in LA, and I'm pointed back towards the West Coast. I just can't afford to get myself out there just yet. But I miss California a lot. And I went to visit a while ago, and it was just like, even if it was LA, because like I'm like, I love the Bay Area, and Bay Area kind of turns its nose up at LA a little bit. But even LA was amazing. I was like, you don't understand. I've been in the Midwest, and I miss the Pacific, and I miss the food out here and just the whole vibe. So that's where I want to get to. How and when, I just don't know just yet. I mean, I'm working on learning to write for TV, but it's all learn as you do kind of thing, where I'm working with my manager and agents, but we'll see how that goes. But that's the other thing no one hardly talks about, is how many playwrights end up writing for TV, because it is a very good way to make money if you're looking to kind of like make a ton of money, which can be nice, so that you can have time to do this other work that you love and not feel like you're beholden to the people with the purse strings. You know, if suddenly money was an issue with theater, what would you be wanting to do versus aiming for certain things and thinking with like a scarcity mindset?
I have a festival that'll go up in October of this year. It is working with 9 communities from across the US, a little into Mexico and in Puerto Rico. It'll have over 300 artists. 80% are people of color. It's largely queer. It's largely folks who identify women powered. So I work on that all day, air day. And thinking through, how do we transform production processes and technologies to take better care of those communities?
Mhm.
And luckily it's a project that's funded by a grant. But so when I'm not working on that, then I'm working on giving them more grants. Because if you're in a system, if you're in Austin, Austin is a fiscal, it's not a wealthy space in terms of arts funding. So you got to go after the big grants. And yeah, so I spend a large part of my time thinking about how to frame things in grant ways so that white people understand what I'm talking about.
Mm.
And so that people will be taken care of inside the projects I want to be developed.
Yes, Lord. That's no small thing. That is, I like the whoo, when we talk about code switching, you can at least in daily interactions, you can read people, but that whole grant writing, code switching thing is a trait that I have so much admiration. I remember the first time I wrote a grant and I led off with this. It was the Texas Women's Fund or something. And I'm I'm quoting it was wrong. It was just wrong. Don't quote a woman of color in your grant. I thought it spoke to spirit. I was trying to explain the project. But yeah, that code switching and grant writing thing ain't no easy feat. So love on you for doing that and blessings on you, baby.
It is not my favorite thing, but you have to, it is one of those things that I have felt like I've had to learn to do if I want to fight for the people I want to fight for. And if I wait on other folks to hand me the money, then I'm at the mercy of those other folks. But if I can control my own budget construction and things like that, then I have more control over how to take care of folks.
I keep circling around doing what's necessary to get what we need, what we deserve, actually. We should already deserve and have. And I feel like I'm getting a message in here from the chat that I want to bring in that says, question, I wonder if you have any thoughts for young Latinx performers about navigating spaces as both young and Latinx. Follow up, I ask because I see a lot of young Latinx folks often being cast as the diversity. So pulling in a little side conversation, we can also let it sit for a second.
It sounded like a statement. I'm like, and what's the question?
I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
The questions as insistences, as proclamation. Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Can you repeat it again? Because I really want, what? Yeah, let's say it again.
I wonder if you have any thoughts for young Latinx performers about navigating spaces as both young and Latinx. I ask because I see a lot of young Latinx folks often being cast as the diversity.
I don't know. I mean, go in with your demands, baby. I don't know, if that, because I think it is a thing, it's gonna happen. My tongue-in-cheek response was enjoy it, because when you get older, they won't invite you in the room at all. Which is true, it's gonna happen. But I think that there's just a power, our young people are so powerful. I think you see that played out on across the country is terrified of the power of the young people. And I think that that's something that you don't walk in the room forgetting that. Go in there and ask for what you need. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We talk about if people have already been through a thing on your behalf, then don't I go in there and ask for what you want. And by that I mean tell them, if you feel, whatever that is, if you feel they're not doing the work of, expanding who they're marketing to get those folks in the theater, demand that. Don't sleep on your power. It's just, and be clear about what you need. And no one else can tell you that. That's your work. Figure out what you need, what you want, and then go in there and ask for it, because you have more power than you think. If you're the big solution to this big pressing question that's halting the nation, my friend, you are in a very, very good position of power, and don't sleep on that.
And I think also, and this has been said in different ways, you're not alone. Find your community, find us where you are right now, find us nationally. There's artists all over who have experience and can offer wisdom, but also offer solidarity and assist you. Like if there are things you want to bring forward, if you know that you're not alone in this. I mean, none of us are. And because at any one point you can feel powerless and not be in problem solving mode, but it just takes one other person to kind of be ready to kind of like hear what you're saying and say, no, we can fix this and help you figure out a way forward. It is like Florinda said, it's gonna be hard. I mean, I went to, I mean, where I grew up, I feel like I've been navigating white spaces for a very long time, and I feel really adept at it in a lot of ways. So when I got to Iowa, I was like, I can do this. In the middle of Iowa, it's and you know, it's very different from. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Texas, but it's very different in a small town in the Midwest. But I was so much older, like going to grad school a second time, like having a thicker skin, a thicker understanding of not just how to engage in the process of being an artist at that, and with getting feedback and things like that. That's already something coming at you, but then having to navigate with, you know, shenanigans, whatever you encounter, either in or outside of your own department. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say it's going to be hard. Find your people. Know that you don't have to do it alone. And Florinda's right. You don't even have to reinvent the wheel. Find your community and tap into that so that you don't feel alone. So that you do feel like you're able to find that wisdom and navigate spaces. So that you do feel safe and you can. I also feel like we're in a moment of potential change, and so leverage your voice, because I think now more than ever, there's a possibility to see some seismic shifts, maybe not everywhere, but I do think that there's the possibility of it. Feels like I haven't seen this in a while, you know?
I would say listen to your elders, because no matter what, they have done more reps from you and than you have, and they have more experience and they've worked harder. Just by time on earth, they are ahead of you. And so you need to listen, and you're going to take all different kinds of lessons from them. Maybe they're artistic, maybe they're economic, maybe they're about cooking something, like who knows. But you have to have that practice of standing in yourself, and also the practice of being patient. And also like theater runs on a scarcity model no matter what. And if you're coming out of school and you're like, yeah, but I just went to school. I'm like, yeah, so did everyone else. Like, don't be precious about yourself. And in terms of your own level of experience and the way that you learn, if you're in white institutions or you're working inside of them, the way that you got to listen to your elders, they're going to teach you how to navigate.
Well, they're going to also help you think about time differently too, because they've
Yep.
been doing this for decades.
Yep.
You know,
I'm gonna throw in one more thing on that, because it's just, Carra, what you just said was listen to them, and also grace. Like, I feel like we are so good at offering white folks. We so forgiving and understanding, and we have so much patience when it comes to everybody else, and we are just like this with each other.
Yep.
And in our own circles. So I do like that patience thing, that grace. Like, and call yourself out on it. We all do it. Like, we'll hold ourselves high to a higher standard of accountability than we do anyone else. So that grace thing. Thank you, Carra, for bringing that up.
Yeah.
So
My friend H. Adam calls it the spirit of generosity. And that is not a spirit that comes to me easily, by the way. My spirit is much more like a dragon. And so like that, like learning to sit in and meditate on like generosity. For yourself and your community.
Oh,
We got a thank you from our question asker. And hearing all your answers, I'm like, did I ask that question? Because those answers really struck me. Thank you all. Wow. There's another question in here that I would love to throw in. And also I want to save some time for how people can stay connected to you, because I know sometimes the hardest part can be just finding maybe they're not even a direct connection, but just like the portal that opens you to even more of the people that support us. So before we get to that, I'm going to go to this last question. Question from the audience, loving these insights around food and vibes. An auntie question, have you eaten? Who or what is feeding you right now?
Like right now, my boo is doing a hell of a fine job though.
I'm happy for that.
Yeah, no, but family, right? I think another blessing of the pandemic has been, like, normally I miss out on everything because I'm in rehearsals, right? Like that's the thing. I'm always in rehearsals. I'm always in the space doing the work. So right now, being able to actually like have time for phone conversations. I can hate the Zoom thing, but I've gotten to see my mother and my sister and my nieces in ways that I have not in forever. So right now, family connections, community connections, and a lot of reading is how I'm getting fed right now, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, being here, I've lived outside of the state for so long and only come home during the summer and at the winter for the holidays, that I've been here almost a year now, and I've been a part of my family's life in a way that I haven't been able to because of distance and the work. So that's been really, really nice to have this time, especially with my parents. Um, uh, I feed myself in this way that I love to cook and bake. And so I took it up to like 11, especially the baking when it came to like the pandemic. Haven't made bread, but I've been doing lots of other baking and stuff like that. Like I made a cheesecake from scratch recently for my nephew, his birthday. It was good. It was very fancy. But I forgot I put it up there, watercoloring. I'm picking up watercoloring because I used to always love painting as a kid and wanted to paint as a kid. And when I told my mother, I think I'm gonna take up watercolors because I want to create art that's just for me, something that's not tied to like a product for someone else or something that I'm going to present to the world, but it's just I want to learn how to create something beautiful that's just for me. So trying to get back into visual art.
I cook a lot. At a tiny pot of tiny pot during the pandemic, and I try to cook for them once a week to every 10 days because it makes me feel better and it makes me think about my family. It makes me think about my grandma. I tend to only like to make things I've never made before. I'm a pretty confident cook, so I'm like, I don't know how to make these like pork picadillo empanadas. I'm gonna make that, and they're just like, we'll eat whatever you make. So I like went through sourdough bread phase, left that phase, and now I'm back in bread with focaccia. And it just makes me feel centered, and it makes me feel like what is the thing that you do that is deliberate and stepful, and the thing happens at the end? Because otherwise you can just sit in an existential crisis. So I would just say, like, find your thing that has steps that occupies you, and a thing happens at the end, and that helps feed you whatever that habit is, that'll help feed you as well.
Keep the molcajete hot.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm the same way. I love to cook new things. I have a bunch of recipes that I got or developed or found over the course of the
And for anyone out there who's not feeling, because there's the great shame to walk through the world as a female identifying body in our community and not cook, they look at you strange. So if anyone out there is feeling, because I don't cook, but I can step by step finish a plate, and so that's how we are part of this.
Yep.
Or a bottle of tequila, I can do that. So if any, because there's such shame, right? When you don't cook, oh my God, the shame.
I wrote an essay recently for a friend's installation project where it was about that I hid that I could cook for 35 years because I didn't know what that meant, that I could. And that, like, what it was saying across so many different ideas around like gender and race, and that I hid it. Like a mutual friend of ours, Julia, once was like, are you telling me you could do this the whole time and you kept this secret from me? And I was like, yes. But it's hard. Like cooking is complex. Let's just name what it means to cook is a complex gesture.
I can't wait till the pandemic is over, so I'm coming straight to your house.
Come
I
to my
heard there was a
house.
plate to be
We will
had.
like throw down, and I loved it. You don't gotta cook. I just want to feed you.
Yeah, I'm coming. That's enough said.
Well, thank y'all for answering that question and for bringing in the like complications around shame and gender and cooking. Like we have a whole nother hour we could probably pop open. Unfortunately, this time is coming to a close, but I have to share that this is feeding me to be here with you all today. So thank you. And that's all we have the time for today. Anything else you want to just share in before we say goodbye?
Oh, you
I
said you wanted
do.
us to share how to reach us, right? Should we put that in the chat? Will that show up in the chat if we put that stuff there?
I think I don't know how all the chat operates. No, the answer is no. I got it from the tech folks. If you have a handle or a website or your festival, Carra, if you want to mention that again.
Yeah, I'm at Live in America. It's dash, so live-in-america.com is the developing website for that project. And I'm at Fusebox Festival, and you can find me there as well. Or on social medias, the 2 R's and the C in Carra, you can find me.
I'm at FlorindaBryant.com if you want to find me. And I guess my last thing was, which I should have been thinking like, promote yours. I should have, but I didn't. Continue to do the work, include your Black Latinx fam. We have a lot of work to do there as we continue to heal and move forward. There's a lot of us that are not included to the table. So if you look up and you don't see varying shades of brown, you got a whole bunch of people missing. And if you meet me doing that work, you'll find me, and sooner than you will on the internet. So I look forward to seeing y'all in the field.
My samples of my work can be found on the New Play Exchange. And you can reach me, like you can email through the New Play Exchange and I'll get it. I get those emails. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and my handle is Marisela T Orta, so MARISELATORTA. So it's like Marisela and Torta. So that's how you can find me. And on Instagram, it's mostly pictures of food. And on Twitter, you know, whatever. I'm whatever's in my head or whatever I'm talking about.
Perfecta. Thank you all. And thank you all for checking in, for your questions.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Is it cool?